I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
You got what I need.
Coming in with the sounds of Manolo.
That's not Manolo.
Well, you know,
No,
Manolo inspired.
But this is not Manolo singing. This is his little friends.
Well, you know what? It takes a bunch of mariachis to make a band, and of course that means we're doing the Book of Life here at Anatomy of a Movie. That was the voice of Sarah Stretton.
Hello.
The voice of Demetri Panos.
Hello, movie fans.
And the voice of Phil Svitek.
Hello, Phil.
Hello.
Phil's in quite the broadcasting mood.
You haven't been on a panel in a little while.
I haven't been on a panel in a
Welcome
while.
back.
But a great movie to come back in on. I was looking forward to this movie. I enjoyed the movie, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Same here.
That's how I'm just going to summarize this entire experience of the Book of Life. It came out of nowhere for me. I didn't the advertisements I didn't see beforehand. But then they just came out of nowhere and they swarmed me, and I was like, this looks like a good movie.
See, if you've been paying attention, the advertisements came out months and months and months ago, hit us hard, and then disappeared for forever, and then all of a sudden the movie had arrived. Huh, interesting marketing plan.
Yeah, and unless you were going to a lot of kids' movies, because I saw this, the movie was trailered on the right movies for this, you know, but I do agree. I mean, it wasn't. I don't exactly know where they were marketing. They probably a lot of Nickelodeon, which I don't watch a lot of Nickelodeon.
No, I don't either.
I was expecting to see it on Star Wars Rebels, but Disney probably ixnayed the advertising. Like, you know, we have our own kids movies. We're gonna do Big Hero 6. So I don't know if that's the case, but didn't see any there. But I saw the trailers was like on Box Trolls. I forget if it could have been on Train Your Dragon too.
I think
things
it was.
like that.
I think it was
so,
Train Your Dragon. That was months ago.
Yeah. So.
But I mean, by the sounds of your enthusiasm, you guys like this movie.
Love this movie, actually. Yeah.
I thought it was so sweet. It's one of the animated movies that I would like to see again. I like the story. I warmed up to the music, and by the end, really loved it. I didn't realize that this was a soundtrack of mixed both covers and original songs. So at first, that took me out of it for a minute because I was like, "Wait, I know this song, and it sounds very different." But I thought that they did a really good job of like, kind of creating this like hybrid of different genres of music and translating them more into like the Hispanic culture. So it's something I really enjoyed, and I look forward to watching again.
I really, to me, what got me was there just seemed to, it was fun, first and foremost. I also like anytime there's like sort of a bet involved. It's fun because obviously you have the people that made the bet trying to manipulate the people that don't know about the bet. So that aspect just in general is fun for me. And you know what, the cast, right, the people who voiced this movie, and we'll talk about every single one of them, I feel like there was definitely a lot of them. You know, you had two different people playing the young characters, and one for the younger character, one for the older character, but it just seemed like everyone was in it to make a great movie. Yeah. From the bottom of the totem pole to the top of the totem pole.
There was just a ton of energy
Yeah,
in
there was
each
energy.
character. There was so much vocal energy. I thought they did a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this movie was vibrant, a lot of heart, very charming. To me, it was original because of the, let's call it the Hispanic flavor, the Latin American flavor that was part of this movie, which I think is like, I think it was great that I saw different environments, and they were done so colorfully, so vibrantly. They were great, and the way that the story was told was I loved it because the bookend, the end of the, you know, when we get the reveal at the end, it was super. I love the characters. I love the story that it told. You know, I like this Day of the Dead lore. But again, because of this, it had this Latin American flavor to it. It brought me something that I haven't seen before that I wasn't necessarily privy to. So I'm glad this was able to get up. It brought me to a different world.
And what I think it being a kids movie, one of the aspects that if you really examine that I liked was that no one was really evil ultimately, except for Chakal and his bandits, right? But even Zabalba and everyone else, they had redeeming qualities. And you could say early on, Joaquin, he was going to be the arrogant, but he had his own arc too, just like Manolo.
Absolutely.
Am I saying it correctly, Sarah?
Manolo?
Manolo.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, because you made fun of me earlier.
No, I was making fun of you because that wasn't him singing.
Okay.
So I just wanted to correct you.
Fair enough. But that, to me, that's what really got me excited. It just had all these elements, and I didn't, based off of the marketing, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I just knew it was something Halloween-y and animated. And I was in.
I knew straight away from the advertisements I did see was going to be the reference to Dia de los Muertos. And I think that also the colors from the trailer were just so beautiful and carried through this whole film. Visually, just this bright candy-like palette of reds and yellows
Mosaics.
and blue and just color everywhere on everything.
Yeah.
There was nothing that was like muted except for actually maybe the bandits, which to me came across as more of like a muted tone. Everything else had so much life. And I just thought visually one of their goals I know was to make it look like art, make it look like folk art, and that completely came across.
And I think it really referenced Hispanic, Latin America, Mexico in this positive, bright way that sometimes it's not put that way. Like, I'm trying to think of the science fiction movie.
This isn't it, but Dallas Buyers Club certainly didn't portray it well, where you can just get any drugs you want.
No, you're right. And Elysium, but this portrays this, and this is what I think is great for families. Take their kids to this because this is a part of a culture, and even though it's a pastiche of various things, it was so beautiful to look at. But yet it didn't detract away from the story because I wanted to know where it was going to go. And even though, I couldn't necessarily, you could sort of telegraph how things might play out, which was fine in this movie because, like you said, there wasn't a character in it. Channing Tatum character, for example, could have been the complete like douchebag bad guy thing, but you couldn't hate him. Like you understood why these three characters were friends. And yeah, it was so much fun.
So let me ask you this: what universally, there's so much folklore in it, and obviously, they try to kind of gear towards Mexico and things like that. But just even down to the snake, right, and that being so biblical, and what religion or kind of anywhere you go in the planet, don't you have an idea of the underworld versus like whatever heaven may be for anyone? And kind of also celebrating the dead. I mean, there's so much that kind of went into it, and just even and also the story structure. How many times have we realistically seen a movie that opens up with someone retelling a story and then kind of going through that?
Right.
But just their little spins on each one of those elements and the combination of it. That's what made it for me.
I agreed, and there were hints of like Corpse Bride in this movie for me. But it didn't bother me because I was seeing this in a very fresh way. And the way that it was told, too, and you can tell there was like you said, with all the voices, with all the talent that we had in this movie, and for me, outside of the trailers, Guillermo del Toro being a part of this, I was I was in. I wanted to see what he had in mind in producing this movie. And for the director, Jorge Gutierrez, you have like his inspiration for all this was his grandfather told me about the revolution, and that's how he met his grandmother. So, and then my dad would also tell stories of all the struggles they had to go through. So it was very much a family project for him, and you could tell there was a passion and a love from everybody.
And the theme of family carries so strong in this film, which ties very much into Hispanic culture, and that being the basis of everything and how family interacts and influences his life. And I liked that they did include that. Not only was this a hero's journey and a love story, but constantly his family was used as support. They were with him through the whole thing. They were part of his arc. And that that theme, I think, does come from the writing and comes from his inspiration.
Absolutely. And the theme of remembrance.
Absolutely, you know,
And that's on pretty much on Day of the Dead.
Absolutely.
That's what it's there for, is to be remembered, and how they did intersect. I think this movie brings a new spin to the month of October. So much
or November. I mean, you know.
Yeah. No,
I mean, because I'll be honest, until
November 1st
this
and 2nd.
movie, I didn't know that it was November 2nd. I actually thought it was like October 30, 31st-ish, but...
Sometimes it does, depending on the location or the area, it does actually span for multiple days. And like each day has kind of a certain, not theme, but ritual and different process. So it does in some places go up to 4 days, 3-4 days, but stretching through November 2nd.
I mean, you know, I like that aspect of it, but just even the idea of that universal theme of like, you know what, never forget one's history and one's family, right? That was the struggle with Joaquin. His father, he was trying to live up to his father, and obviously, but his father wasn't there. Now with Manolo, his father was there, so he was there to scold him the entire time of like, hey, you have to be a bullfighter. That's just what you have to be. And so that aspect, I think, especially nowadays with kids, I think it can go a long way, because sometimes that value is forgotten. You know, there's so much attention on individualism.
Well, tell me if you agree with this. And the other interesting part of this story is like when you have the father telling the son, you have to be a bullfighter. It's in the Disney world, it's rarely a male character. It's the princess. It's the princess who has like Belle. It's the father.
Has some sort of expectation put on
that's
them.
saying you have to do this. And Little Mermaid, same way. I can't think of a male character, say within the Disney world, in which the parental figure is saying, you know, this is the slot that you're in. You know, you can't go outside of that slot. So to me, it was again another spin.
Not exactly in the same bond, I would say. Like definitely this to have in a Disney realm to grow up and be fully aligned with your parent the whole time. For male figures, you're only going to see like sub characters like Prince Philip in Sleeping Beauty, who has some sort of expectation. There's a little bit of expectation put on like Simba. Outside of those, you're right. It's not too heavy. Finding Nemo, but he's just a child. You don't really see them get to this stage.
But also with Simba, you kind of look at it, it's very positive, like, you know, remember who you are, right? That's the famous line. I'm not getting that incorrect.
Yeah, that is
you know, I mean, that's not like, hey, be a bullfighter, because you have to be a bullfighter.
So I sort of like that approach in this movie. And again, it made things fresh. And I'm not dissing the Disney movies at all. I'm just saying, going into this film, for me, it was all about its freshness and its vibrancy, and in a sense that lent to it an originality that I think in animated films, this is great. It's great.
You know, maybe you guys have a little bit more info on this, but the fact that, you know, it was originally optioned as a DreamWorks movie back in 2007, and the fact that it didn't go off because of creative differences. And I like, you know, it's always a dicey field on, like, especially, you know, not that these guys are independent filmmakers, but I just know it from the independent filmmaker side, when you try to take a stance against the studio and say, hey, this is the vision we're going for. And I like that they stood for that. I don't know what the creative differences might have been, but obviously they succeeded.
Well, you know, it's funny because I did find something regarding the production that I find fascinating, and it's truly the Hollywood norm and tale, where, you know, he had this project. He said it took roughly 5 years, but the director actually had the project for the last 14 years. And when he started presenting it to studios, he was just out of school and he wanted to present this, and all he was getting was no. And the quote is, "There's no audience for this, and Hispanic story is not universal." Boy, how times have changed when you have things like Pantaleon Films and our good friend, partner, Brenda, who's head of marketing for Pantaleon, what they've done for the Latin American film and what they're doing. And now that there's a growth,
and when you look at the numbers of who's seeing theaters,
all of a sudden, if there were no numbers like from a Pantaleon Films and what they can do, there wouldn't be a Book of Life, because the Hollywood, they're almost too afraid to take that risk but only once it becomes very popular, then everybody has to make their Latin American movie or the movie geared to Hispanics. I'm glad that it worked for this, but he was like, what was great even further, they all closed the door so a long time ago. He even got Guillermo del Toro had found him, and he wanted to be the producer of this. And even with Guillermo del Toro on board, they were like, nope. And so we really had to convince the studios to let us make the movie, and they give the credit to the company Real FX, which was the animation studio, and they took a chance. And then 20th Century Fox jumped in to do the distribution. So 14 plus years of no, there's no market for the Hispanic audience. Only when like ratings start to expand and the way in which you can do your research and see who you're reaching out to, and then when you start to look at the population and the numbers, well, if they can do this, you just know that an exec is going. It's not we should be doing. It's like, how come we aren't making Hispanic films? It's how come like we're not doing this? So it's funny.
And the funny part about Guillermo del Toro, because he's so much identified with this film, he's really been promoting it, is that they were lucky to get him because supposedly they delivered a horrible pitch. Supposedly their pitch did not go over well, but del Toro just was so fascinated by the world that he was like, you guys did a horrible pitch, but I'm still going to jump on board. And he has really pushed his film and been there for the advertising and been there at their panels and really going for it. So.
Yeah, and he was very hands-on, but the director, Jorge, he loved the fact that he was hands-on. He felt that it gave the production...
Because it's a mentorship. I mean, imagine
exactly
if you're...
what it was for him.
Yeah, you're a young director to
And this is your
Guillermo
first
del Toro.
feature?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to say this, because I think our audience can respect it. One of the things that I do like is movies that are so niche to a very specific culture, right? If you really look at, I know many, for example, European movies, and I've tried to watch more like Asian movies as well, like spring, summer, fall, winter, and spring again.
Sure.
That's a great Asian movie. When you can really look at kind of a movie of a specific culture that holds up in that culture, I think your world would be expanded. And you know what I mean? That's such a beautiful thing, and the fact that, again, it might not necessarily translate audience-wise, and maybe that's because we're too scared to let it. But again, I think if you're a fan of this show, try it, and you will love some of those movies.
Yeah, and don't forget, too, it's also, just because I'm not Hispanic, I'm Greek. I'm 100% Greek, but that doesn't mean that going into this movie, I didn't come out of this movie, feeling like I went to someplace different. It brought me to someplace great. And thematically, it's universal. So it doesn't matter. So long as, every culture, there's something akin that we share in certain respects.
Fear of death.
A fear of death.
There's not as much a fear of death. There's a love and respect for death.
Right. And remembrance. And so
there's a fear of losing the ability to be remembered.
Correct.
That's the fear. The fear is not of death.
And isn't that...
And that's a beautiful concept.
It's beautiful, but at the same time, you can say it's somewhat universal. Like, everybody can, there may be a fear of death, but God, if I'm not remembered, we all try in one way to indelibly leave a stamp on this world. So when it has a universal theme, right? And if it comes from a particular culture that's showing us this universal theme that I can be akin to, that's great. And when you show it in such a beautiful, fun way, you just have a great time. When I was done with this movie, ear to ear smile.
I didn't necessarily want to cut to this early, but no, because one of the universal things is the music, right?
Right.
And I think Sarah mentioned this before we started, but there's a combination of cover songs and also original songs. Mm-hmm. And let's start with the cover songs, only because you can take these songs and do a cover and make them very different yet universal. Right? There's no better language universally than music.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And there's a great story about how they got Creep. Mm-hmm. And you're right. But you can change it up. Okay. And you're right. You had said, am I hearing like Creep? Like, is that what am I hearing?
I was like, I know these lyrics.
Yeah.
Wait.
It works in the movie. And it's funny because Guillermo admits that he wanted Creep for one of his Hellboy movies. And Radiohead said, no, nope, not going to do it. So when he saw it in the script, Guillermo saw it in the script, he went to Jorge and said, hey, you better get used to looking for something else because they ain't going to hand it over. And he explained his story. And so what he did, he goes, all the studio, even the studio people again going, tricky song to get. Don't think you're going to be able to do it. You should try something else. So caution to the wind. He sent the band a little video of what they were, like an animatic, I suppose. I haven't seen the video. He sent them, this is how we want to use the song. They said, you know what? You get it. This is what the song, have it. Go ahead. And I'm like, they said no to Guillermo del Toro too. And the studio said no. And he's like, well, I just want to show them. I think it's important for the movie. And Radiohead said, that's awesome. And that's how they get Creep. And they repurposed it in such a way that for the American audience, like you're like, oh, I know that song. But think about how many kids don't know that song, but they know it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's great.
I definitely liked all of the blends of music that they use and the original songs. I have to say that my probably favorite song in the whole movie was the Apology song.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lovely song in general. I think not only does it fit perfectly with the action that's going on, but it fits so well with just the theme and the feeling inscribed. And it was one of the songs that truly did relate to me to the saying on his guitar, singing from the heart. I just thought that it was done so well. And that was my favorite, I think, of the entire soundtrack. And just how it played out in the film, how they placed it, and how it centered around the whole activity and the turn of his family and the apology and going back to the line of never saying I'm sorry. I thought it connected so well, and it was also beautifully sung.
Yeah.
For me, because I love Westerns, I like the Ecstasy of Gold.
Yeah.
Because, if I'm not mistaken, it was played during the bullfight.
Right.
And it was so brilliantly switched up and yet so familiar. And the strange part, too, is, to your point, Sarah, these songs, even when they were original, you're like, have I heard this before? It sounds familiar to something. Can't Help Falling in Love. I like that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, the soundtrack for me, for me, looking at just even the list, I without really, if I just saw the list, I don't know which one's original, which one's not. And that's the beauty.
You got what I need. Like that was funny. I mean, and that's the other thing too that I loved about this movie. There was never, and it could have gone this way, but there was never a character catered to stereotype or defined by stereotype necessarily. They had their funny moments, but the audience that I saw it with was majority Hispanic. So certain lines, even like the churro line, somebody could say, oh, that's a little bit like maybe that's racist or something. No, the audience I saw it with, they loved it, as well as the
one my audience loved was, why are Mexicans so obsessed with death? Everyone's just cracking up.
Yeah.
Dying, like rolling in their seats. That one, and also there's one line, something about like, we're just kids, or like, why are you telling us this story?
Oh yeah.
Or something along like, I can't remember exactly. Like, why are you telling us this? Like, we're children. I don't remember the exact wording, but everyone's everyone just like, you could feel the audience would be like.
and I have to say too, the audience, I just saw a lot of kids. Saw it on a Saturday mid-afternoon show. A lot of kids, and for the most part, they were all quiet. They were like watching the movie. They were getting into the movie. They were laughing when they were supposed to laugh. So it had their attention. Now, could that be the vibrancy of the picture? There seemed to be something always going on. But regardless, their attention was had. And made my movie-going experience a lot better because there were no crying kids running up and down aisles.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. What was I gonna say? One of the through lines, obviously, that I thought. Actually, let me go with this: the humor. Right, the humor. You guys were kind of talking about it, hinting at it with the quotes that you liked. Their timing was so impeccable, whether it was quote unquote physical comedy, even though it's animated, right, or verbal, the grandmother, to me, I think that was my favorite joke of like, because just so many people went there to the land of the dead, and she shows up and is like, oh my God, you too? This is cholesterol.
Cholesterol. Yeah. I mean, he was losing his family members. They were dropping like flies. And it was hysterical, like, Dad? And then Grandma? Because she showed up like minutes later.
Seconds later. They all needed to be present for the bullfight, obviously.
Yeah,
and even the bullfighters themselves, the fact that each of them had a more ridiculous story than the next of what they were remembered for.
Right.
And and what was it?
It was a one-upmanship kind of a game. It was hysterical.
Yeah, why do you need legs and arms to bullfight?
And I had like 14 bulls surrounded it. Yeah, that was fun. But going back to colors too, because as I'm thinking about it, even when they were in the land of the dead, even that, although the colors weren't vibrant, but it still looked beautiful. It looked and layered. Definitely. Yeah, the animation in this movie was fantastic.
And I thought it was a really good choice how they referenced a lot of Hispanic culture also more subtly, like whether it be the actual, like how they would throw in, you mentioned other family members, how you have the opera singer who would bring in very classical songs that you've heard before, and they're there, but they're not at the forefront. They also did the same thing with, I believe, the nuns at certain points, bringing in very classical songs as well. Or the talk about the animation of how they created these individual characters, this like wooden doll approach that is very distinct and very characteristic of like Mexico, and I thought it was beautifully done and something that I can't remember seeing.
No,
I don't think we've seen those silhouettes in animation.
No,
and the team building they used to make these characters between, I believe it was him and his wife.
He and his wife, and he specifically, I did the male. He goes, I didn't pretend to know how to create the female character, and they didn't want to overemphasize like the women characters, so his wife did the female characters, which I thought was, we talk about a collaborative, we always talk about collaboration. Here's a great example of collaboration where husband and wife, they're working on this project together, they get the great talent, and you're right, the design of this movie and the characters, again, it gave us something original. Earlier, I know we talked about Box Trolls, which is a stop-motion animated movie, and that too looked very different too. Well, not as vibrant, very layered, but it brought us into a different world. This movie for me was a little bit more fun because of its vibrancy and its energy, and the design.
This is a Sylvester Stallone quote, I believe, and it's a little bit more of a grim view on the filmmaking industry. It's like when you make a movie, it's like going into a dark closet and dressing yourself. You never know what you're going to come out with ultimately. But I think this is, if that's the rule, and I'm not saying it is, but according to Stallone, then I think this proves the exception. Because, and as you're talking about the collaboration and whatever else, everyone knew what this needed to be, or at least they had a feeling.
And they were very inspired, like, we just talked about how they had this husband and wife team with the designing of the characters. The one female character he did have some say on was he did help with La Muerte, which is probably why she is so,
animated. And
she's gorgeous, flamboyant. Like she is just drop dead gorgeous animation. But when it comes to like the colors and how these characters were viewed, when they talked about Maria's character, in Hispanic culture, like the eyes are the windows to the soul, so they wanted her eyes to be like very large. They talked about how Manolo's character, normally bullfighters, toros, or matadors, they are in a green or a red, which is what you see his family members in. But they wanted him in the black because it was more kind of mariachi. So it was kind of this hybrid of him being this musician, but being a bullfighter with all of the ornamentation and stature. So every character, the colors, every detail was very thought out and did relate to who the character was, especially because in this animated movie you're following them wearing the same thing. So it does, every detail was really considered in this.
And I think that it came from the guy's head, because regarding his design and storyboarding, he worked with his writer Douglas Langdale, who they had worked on this show El Tigre together. And as they were writing, he would say, designing and directing, starting the script. And then as the script gets developed, I'm designing. So I have all these designs. I designed all the male characters. My wife, Sandra, she did all the female characters of the movie. So we keep going through the process. And for him, and I like this, I'm like a little kid. I got to animate the movie. I got to do the voice of the big guy, the churros guy. And that was nice. So their passion and going into it, I felt like a little kid. I mean, that says it all. I mean, because what that energy, like you said, that all comes up on screen, and he didn't fail at all. I think the whole team didn't fail, so
no,
it's great. And the humor of it as well, I thought it played great, and I laughed. It made me smile a lot, and through characterization, through a line of dialogue like cholesterol. It's great.
And Phil mentioned this earlier, and we were talking a little bit about characterization, about how no one truly was a bad guy besides the bandit, who we don't even really learn too much about, besides that they've kind of displayed him as gone crazy from losing his medal. But everyone else, even when you get down to like Xibalba still he's evil, but he's not. He doesn't.
It's out of a boredom.
It's out of a boredom,
Yeah.
and he has his like weaknesses for like love and affection.
Yes.
And even when he'll be like, and when you can let him concede like the bullfight, he's not. He didn't technically kill the bull, and he's like, that'll work. I can't like shove it off. He's like, there is a level of decency to him,
and he has respect for I can't.
La Muerte?
La Muerte. He has.
They're like supposed to.
Yeah, they're like intertwined.
Yes.
And they can't live
Constant
without
betting battle.
Yeah.
Of love.
And quips. They had great quips together too.
So I do think that point was done really well. I think that they could have actually made Joaquin even a little bit nicer. I think that there were certain points where they tried to kind of make him not the most witty person on the planet, just so we wouldn't want Maria to go with him.
But part of it was, I could buy the fact that it was the metal. That kind of, think of it like Lord of the Rings, where it corrupts you over time.
Right.
You could pass it off that way. I'm just saying, like, if anything, like, I understand it's for kids, and maybe you do want to be like, no, she really does belong with this one. They could have even made him a little bit nicer, and it wouldn't have bothered me. It didn't bother me that much where he was. I liked that he wasn't like just a full-on bad guy who wanted to slay everything. I did like that he was a hero who seemed to have actual affection for Maria. I liked that they showed that he wasn't completely happy with her just saying I do for the town.
Right.
You could tell that wasn't really a good feeling for him.
I agree.
And that was a nice layer they added. And I was just like, we'll believe you guys. We understand the concept of true love by this point. You can make them a nice person.
And tell me if you agree too. I mean, he didn't. To me, he would like Maria understood where he was coming from. Like Maria wasn't the kind of gal that would have just anybody as a friend. So to me, you sort of kind of get that relationship, and at the same time,
which is why what I liked the dinner scene, right, where the dad's like, "Hey, if only he had a reason to stay." But the fact that he placated to that, she knew that wasn't his inner nature, and she says, "If this is the way you guys are gonna be, I'm out."
I'm out.
And how often do we see that? Especially in a movie, B in an animated movie.
Yeah.
Princess Jasmine. Sorry, just throwing it out there. There were some very strong similarities. I like both of them. Where it was, they actually, I believe, have a very similar line where she says, like, I'm not something you can basically...
I'm not a prize to be won.
I'm not, exactly. Very reminiscent. You can see the parallels. But I do like they made her a strong character. They gave her funny moments with it, too. Like where she says it's not going to be that easy when they try to kiss her.
Did you think it was going to be this easy? Yeah.
Gave her different talents.
Too.
They made her smart. They made her... she could do kung fu and fence and was knowledgeable and cared about animals. They gave her
a great
qualities.
female character for an animated movie. Great female character, I think, for a movie. Was I the only one like when? And here's where I thought it was going to go the Disney route. When the father said, "I'm sending you off to boarding school," and she's like, "You can't do that." Like, and I was like, oh, okay, now we're getting into that Disney territory. But she ended up complying. Mm-hmm. And she ended up going away. You know, she had her fight.
More
but the
reminiscent
father
of Catherine Zeta-Jones in Zorro.
Yeah.
She went away.
She
And
went away.
comes back.
Yeah, and you know, but
But she made the most of her time,
made the most of her
unlike
time.
unlike being, you know,
fighty and rebellious about it.
yeah.
She came back a brighter, smarter
Brighter
person.
star.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the actors or not the
Yeah,
actors, but the voices? Let's call them.
The voice.
Sure.
Which, by sometimes you know when a voice overtakes, it becomes larger than the character itself. And even though you had heavy hitters in this movie, Zoe Saldana, Channing Tatum, Ron Perlman, Christina Applegate, Ice Cube, Danny Trejo. They never, Gabriel Iglesias, Dan Navarro. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
Kate Del Castillo.
It just, no one part was greater than the sum. What's the full line? I'm getting it confused.
Some of its parts make up the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
and so everyone understood their character and they never went beyond that. It wasn't like, oh, I'm listening to Channing Tatum. No, I'm listening to Joaquin.
Yeah. And what's great too is apparently too, as he was writing this, you know, for Manolo, he's like, he always had Diego Luna in his mind to do it, even though at the time he didn't know if he could sing. He's like, I didn't care. He goes, that's who I had in my head as voicing voicing that. But and then Candlemaker, he goes, I kind of designed them for Ice Cube, like, and I'm like, that's great, because Ice Cube was hysterical in this too. You know, and then with Channing Tatum, he needed a high school quarterback, and when we see like a 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street, that's exactly what he is. He's like the high school quarterback, and he wanted who better to than Channing Tatum, and he said for Zoe Saldana, he actually liked their chemistry in The Terminal, Steven Spielberg movie. He goes, I like their chemistry there. It was going to translate on screen. I wanted that. And so...
And she's the type of person, she understands this character very well. Listen to Maria Menounos' conversations with Maria and Zoe interview.
Yeah.
She's very much like that. She's very feisty, and she will not let men rule her life in any sort of way.
Sort of kind of like Maria.
Sort of kind of like Maria Menounos. But...
and her character.
And her character, you know, so she understands 100%. Yes.
But Maria too. Much love there too.
Much love there too. And Guillermo del Toro did the voice of the Land of Remembered Captain's wife, which I thought was neat. Old Man Hemingway made an appearance, not the person, the character.
No, and it's true the way that they filmed it too. He did do his best to try to get these people to do their scenes together, and he did work around a lot of their schedules, but he got to get Zoe and Diego to sit together to do out their lines, and he got to record Ron Perlman too. I was hitting my head going, who's playing? Not until the end credits.
Whose voice is that?
Because I was thinking a little Kelsey Grammer for some reason. I didn't know it was Ron Perlman, but then it makes sense. It's Guillermo del Toro. It's like, hey, and so and Kate Di Castillo were together.
She's, by the way, a very, very famous Mexican actress, and I think I have it here. She has her movie Under the Same Moon is to date the highest grossing Spanish language theatrical release in U.S. history. So although she's huge.
Remember that movie? Yep. No, and again, he made a family atmosphere for ultimately a movie about family. And I think, again, just going back to, we always talk about the collaborative process, and when it's working on all cylinders, and when they're all like going up and down, like clicking together, like you end up getting a movie like The Book of Life. Yeah. You know, it really, really works. So, really not, you know, and as far as kids' movies, I'm thinking, like, you know, I got out of this, and I was like going, there's one other animated movie that, and I believe it's just one other one, and it's The Big Hero 6. Haven't seen it. A lot of talk about it. I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait. You know, but I was thinking, God, if anything, Disney gets, they sort of kind of do have the hold on getting Academy Awards for their animated movies. If Fox plays their cards right, I think this movie, perhaps the Lego movie, but that's been out for a while. If Fox plays their cards right, they could give Disney a run for the money as far as what could be winning a Best Animated Feature. I mean, I think Book of Life is that good. Haven't seen Big Hero 6 yet, but I really came out of this movie.
I think
it was that good.
What I like about this movie, that I think time will be kind to this movie, and I don't see it. It could be. I don't know if it's going to be exactly like The Nightmare Before Christmas, right. But I feel it's going to have a longevity. It being kind of seasonal, but it also having that message that can hold up to that seasonality.
I think that you're hitting the nail head. I think that being seasonal is probably one of the strongest for the life of this movie. I think that especially around this time of year, I kind of said this earlier, this really does hit a special niche where in Halloween you have some of your classics. Right. You've got you are a scary movie fan here, so all of that list. But also you've got the classics like Hocus Pocus, Nightmare Before Christmas, The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Absolutely.
And if you look at this movie, it fits in with those without overlapping on anything. And so I think that's really going to live, where I could see this easily adding in to like my October, November like movie lineup. And it's not competing with anything. It's just adding a new flavor, a new view, a new world. And I think that really is going to help it. People are going to buy this movie. They're going to be able to watch it every year.
And I think it's repeat watching. Again, I think it could be that kind of movie where every time you see it, you might notice a little bit of a different something in the design.
Which is so great.
When you have the repeatability.
When you have the ability, obviously when you shoot something live action, you have to fill the frame. And the more you can fill it, the less boring it becomes, right? But it has to still be true to what... If you're in a kitchen set, obviously we can't have
a toilet.
Yeah, there you go. But the fact of that, when you can,
I wouldn't need that.
When you have the ability to within the frame put anything that you want,
right,
and the ability to think, okay, how can we 100%? You guys keep talking about the colors, and part of that is that every little piece of that frame is used to put some sort of color or texture or whatever else, so that way it just pops and you remember it. And so in the sense of rewatchability, you know what, by the 100th time you might just be watching maybe there's a fly in the background. I don't know.
But I totally get what you're saying, because at this point with various other movies that I've seen 100 times, yes, sometimes I still will see a movie and still go, I've seen this movie so many times, how did I not notice that? So and I agree. I think that
I have something for you to look out for the next time you watch this.
Go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that, like, even in the design of the buildings of the town, he wanted the buildings to kind of be leaning on each other to symbolize how the people of the community and the families all had to lean and rely on each other. So there's details like that. And now if you go back, you look at their village, you're going to see all these buildings kind of have a different structure, and they also lean on each other.
Interesting.
Very fascinating.
Tons of things.
And again, originality. I mean, this movie looks so different from other animated movies that we've seen. No disregard to some of them, because some of them have been great, but this totally looked original. That was another reason why I was so into it. It really did show me something. It showed me another world. Well, and it brought in some culture into my life. And about the only culture I get in my life is eating a cup of yogurt. So...
did we talk about the art of books?
No.
Okay. Do you guys have this in your notes or no?
No, go ahead.
Well, Jorge, he took all the concept art from the art of, that's the series books. And he's the quote is, "I saw every single one that comes out, and my biggest heartbreak is that I see all of this glorious art, and then the movie doesn't look like that. The mandate of this movie was, our art of book is going to look exactly like the movie." And every artist poured their heart and soul into that idea. So
And supposedly he's very satisfied with the result.
Yeah, and
I would be too.
well, and Guillermo is extremely satisfied about the result, and he went off to say something that I 100% agree with. He said, something to the effect of, when you go out to a movie as a family, you want it to be an outing like when you go to a great restaurant. So you go to Chinese food, you go to Italian or Greek food. I think this is the biggest, most amazing Mexican meal we can offer the world, audio and visually. And to that point, I was telling you this story about, because it was a midday afternoon show, and I'm already thinking, okay, what are we going to do for dinner after? And I was thinking pizza. After this movie, I said, I want Mexican now. And so that palate was all there. I had that culture. And for him, too, he goes, this movie has the personality we wanted it to have. It was a delicate movie to produce because not only you get involved creatively, you get involved emotionally. And that was another thing that I have to attune to. I did get involved emotionally. And so it works there, and you want to protect it. So we're having a battle to work very hard to keep the movie at a budget that allowed us the freedom, but gave us the spectacle that we wanted to deliver. We were very ambitious. We wanted to deliver a movie you've never seen before. I think they succeeded, and I think we did it, according to Guillermo del Toro, and I do too.
And I think that we're agreeing. I believe it's certified fresh. I'm looking right now. It's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So people are out there. They're watching it and they're liking it. And so all you can do now is recommend it to your families to watch this one.
So
and
and
your
it's
friends.
79% Rotten Tomatoes. It gets an A- in Cinema Score, which is interesting because the Cinema Score, as we say, it goes to movie audiences, and they usually are there Friday, pretty much a good chunk of Fridays, sometimes on Saturday, and they pass out the flyers. So you're not really having necessarily young kids filling out these sheets for Cinema Score.
Parental consent.
So of course, so a lot of it's like adult going. So an A-, that's a good score. Production budget on this movie was $50 million, which
That's not that high for an animated film.
No, actually, it's cheaper. It's on the cheap
Yeah.
end because Box Trolls is much higher.
Yeah.
The total budget for this movie was estimated at $80 million.
Mm-hmm.
It opened up at number 3 at the box office. Its opening weekend domestic gross is about $17 million, and today it's about at an estimated $20 million. Its worldwide box office is $30 million or so. So, I think it could have longevity through the month of October, up until at least The Big Hero 6. But you'll get the Halloween crowd, and I think with the word of mouth too, I've been recommending it to people, young and old. You're just gonna have a good time watching this movie.
It's short enough. It's at 95 minutes,
right?
Where it packs so much into that 95 minutes, and the fact. The songs take up 37 minutes and 34 seconds.
Really?
And you don't even that's a third of the movie.
You can almost call it a musical.
Almost. I mean, 18 songs.
Yeah.
That's more than remember the old CDs? They only used to have 12.
Oh, right.
So you're 6 more beyond a CD.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to put a little bit of perspective on what that budget is, we talked about How to Train Your Dragon 2 that came out earlier this year.
Right.
Their budget was $145 million.
And that's combined. So you got to factor in at the very least 30 to 35 million in marketing. So you're still talking over $100 million.
Yeah. And then you're coming out with a product like this that is just as beautiful to watch, just as entertaining, definitely a different look, a different world.
Right.
But I think on par, for as much as they're different, you can watch both of them and think they're both beautiful.
Sure.
This doesn't necessarily apply to this in this very specific way, but there's sometimes I love when there's a movie that's made for such a shoestring budget and it rivals so many movies. Like, for example, Joel Silver said the same thing of Bound, the Wachowski brothers' first movie.
Sure.
And I think Joel and those guys had made another movie, and they're like, oh god damn these guys, they made a movie for $5 million and we made an $80 million movie, and theirs was so much better.
Yeah.
And I just love that spirit when you just, again, when creativity can really shine and win, the budget, it's not irrelevant, but it doesn't become the burden that it needs, that people think it needs to be.
Right. No, and I'm right there with you. the shirt of which I am wearing, this was at times and still today perhaps considered the highest, most profitable independent film of all time on a meager budget in 1977 of $300,000.
And for those listening, what is the shirt?
The shirt is Halloween. It's from Halloween, and I've been wearing my Halloween garb for just to get into the spirit of things. But you're right. When you're able to be creativity, when you're able to create and know that you have the budget that you're working with, and even Guillermo says here, he goes, we had to work within our budget, but we believe we put the best thing up on screen and we made something unique, and they did. And like to your point with a How Do You Train Your Dragon, beautiful looking movie and everything, but this is equally as beautiful, and it gave us something fresh and new. And I think the creative process really shines in this. Everybody, like you said earlier with the cast, everybody wanted to be a part of this movie.
Yeah.
And you can tell they all had fun and so proud to, like, I have something to show my kids, or, and I think that's important. And,
also in terms of numbers, so far as I have it reported today, 57% was a female audience, 54% was under 25.
That makes sense,
Absolutely.
Bringing the kids out.
Yeah.
So.
No, absolutely. The Book of Life, like I said, it just shows that it came out perfect time of year. Hopefully they get to reap, some more benefits as the month goes on, month of October.
Honestly, I think, as the years go by, time will be kind to this movie.
And internationally, I think, too, it'll do really well.
I think, what? I think Mexico can really be proud of this movie.
Absolutely.
I think they're going to hold it to a good standard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I know Brenda was very proud when we left, but that says something. And again, it just goes back to the Hispanic audience. Well, it's too catered to them. Things have changed so much within the past 5 years that market is just being looked at as, even look on TV. When you have shows like Jane the Virgin, even for television, they're trying to make telenovela type stories. It is a very big market. So I think Fox, I don't know if it was budgetary. I sort of agree with you that marketing-wise, if we want to talk marketing a little bit more, I think you're right. They sort of kind of pulled back. I only knew it because I go to the movies a lot, and I saw the trailer, but I saw nothing on TV. They weren't advertising on like Supernatural or Arrow or Walking Dead or any of those shows. I
didn't feel like they were advertising, at least from what I saw. I don't watch a ton of kids' TV shows, but you would think that they would at least advertise also to the parents.
Yeah.
On some aspects, and I just felt like that dropped aside. Like, I've seen tons of Big Hero 6, and that's the same
here,
audience.
All over the place. And I saw a lot of billboards for this, though. I did see a lot of billboards for this driving around. So, whatever it is.
But even it used to be called The Day of the Dead, right? The story. But just the Book of Life, as a title, is just so intriguing in general. Like, okay, the Book of Life, what does that mean? And they obviously, within the movie, they reference that too, and what that fully means. But if you just see the title, and that's honestly, I literally just kind of went off of the title.
Really?
And the only other thing that I knew was that it was an animated movie, maybe about Halloween. And I was like, what? That's intriguing to me. I can do this.
Well, let me ask you this: had they gone with what was it called?
Day of the Dead.
You would have thought it was a Jorge Romero zombie movie?
Yeah, it just sounds too similar to what's out there.
Yeah, I will give the studio credit for making them change the title. Book of Life sounds a little bit more positive than Day of the Dead. And then if you do go Day of the Dead, then there's more education involved. This isn't a zombie movie. This is an actual day, and you have to this one, you let the movie educate the audience. Which for me, I loved that aspect. I'm seeing a little bit more culture, and it was just great. That's what made it a breath of fresh air. So,
got it.
Any
last
thoughts before we wrap this up?
I just think, to reiterate what I said, this was a beautiful movie. It looked great. It sounded great. You just feel the energy of the actors coming through. And I think it's going to be wonderful to add into my holiday movie selection. So I'm excited to buy it and watch it again.
Yeah, same here. I would go see it again at the theaters. Good job for Jorge Gutierrez. I think that he did a good job. I will, if I hear his name now, I will be interested to see what he does next. And you know, also big thanks for Guillermo del Toro for sticking with this, being a mentor to this guy, and being hands-on. This almost, you get the feel creatively that this was made like an independent movie. And, you know, kudos to the team, to production, to creative, the animators, the actors who lend their voices. They knocked it out of the park in this movie.
Absolutely. All I can say as we wrap this up is, on a fun, lighter note, I'm glad Joaquin isn't an evil character in the movie, only because I think, if I'm being honest with myself, I'm more of Joaquin than Manolo.
Manolo.
I would say Demetri is definitely Manolo, and the beautiful Maria, of course, Sarah Stretton. And on that note, thank you guys for joining us yet again for another Anatomy of a Movie, The Book of Life, the themes of which are beautiful. Remember them always. Remember your family, and whenever, wherever you're listening.
And your friends, and your co-hosts.
That's right. And let us know what you guys thought of the movie below in the comment section. And we'll see you guys for another Anatomy of a Movie.
Bye.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.